What would you do if a creature that could destroy your entire world came to you not as a conqueror, but as a desperate parent? When xenobiologist Dr. Marcus Chun looked up from his research station on a remote planet Kepler 442b and saw a massive dragon-like alien descending from storm clouds, his first instinct was to run. But the creature wasn't roaring in fury or breathing plasma fire. She was crying. In her massive claws, she carried something small and fragile, her dying child. And somehow, across the vast differences between their species, she had chosen to trust the one thing in the galaxy that everyone said could never be trusted, a human. This is the story of how one desperate mother's faith in humanity changed the fate of two entire civilizations, and why sometimes the greatest strength isn't in our weapons or technology, but in our refusal to let anyone suffer alone, even our enemies. The storm came without warning, turning the amber sky of Kepler 442b into a swirling mass of purple clouds and crackling energy. Dr. Marcus Chun barely had time to secure his equipment before the first bolt of alien lightning struck the crystalline formations surrounding his research station. The impact sent vibrations through the ground that rattled his teeth and made his coffee mug dance across his desk. Marcus had been studying the unique plant life of this distant world for 8 months now, documenting how the native flora seemed to pulse with their own internal light. The assignment was supposed to be peaceful, routine even. Kepler 442b was classified as uninhabited, just another rock in the endless void where humans could stretch their legs and pretend they weren't still the new kids in a galaxy full of ancient, powerful alien races. The second lightning strike was closer, and this time Marcus saw something that made his blood freeze in his veins. The lightning wasn't natural. It was being generated by something massive moving through the storm clouds, something with wings that stretched wider than his entire research facility. Marcus stumbled to his observation deck, his hands shaking as he adjusted the long-range sensors. The readout made no sense. The creature in the storm was giving off energy signatures that matched no known species in the galactic database. More troubling, it was heading straight for him. Through the chaos of wind and alien electricity, Marcus caught his first clear glimpse of the being descending toward his station. It was a dragon, not the mythical creatures from old Earth stories, but something far more magnificent and terrifying. Its scales shifted between deep emerald and silver, each one the size of Marcus's chest. Its eyes glowed like miniature suns, and when it opened its mouth, Marcus expected to see the white-hot plasma breath that had incinerated human colonies on 3 different worlds. Instead, he heard something that broke his heart. The creature was crying. The dragon landed with surprising gentleness for something that must have weighed several tons. Its massive head turned toward the observation deck where Marcus stood frozen, and he saw intelligence in those burning eyes. Ancient, profound intelligence that seemed to look right through him and measure his soul. But it was what the dragon carried that made Marcus forget every warning he'd ever received about hostile alien contact. Cradled in the creature's front claws, protected by a cage of talons that could have sliced through battleship armor, was something small and still. A baby dragon, no larger than a human child, its scales dull and lifeless, its tiny chest barely rising and falling. The mother dragon's cry echoed across the crystalline landscape, a sound like breaking glass mixed with the deep resonance of grief. She lowered her great head and nudged her child with her snout, but the little one didn't respond. Marcus didn't need to be a xenobiologist to recognize what he was seeing, a mother watching her baby die, and her complete helplessness to stop it. For a moment that stretched into eternity, human and dragon stared at each other across the space between their species. Marcus knew he should be running, calling for evacuation, preparing for the worst. The Draconian Empire had been at war with humanity for over 2 decades. Their dragons had turned human colonies into ash and melted human ships into scrap metal. This creature before him represented everything humanity feared in the dark spaces between stars. But fear wasn't what Marcus felt as he looked into those ancient, desperate eyes. He felt recognition. He had seen that exact expression before, in his sister's face when her son had been dying of genetic cancer. It was the look of a parent who would do anything, sacrifice everything, for just one more moment with their child. Marcus found himself moving before his mind caught up with his actions. He walked slowly down from the observation deck, his hands raised to show he was unarmed. The dragon's massive head tracked his movement, but she didn't attack. Instead, she seemed to be studying him with the same careful attention he might use when approaching a wounded animal. When Marcus was close enough to touch the dragon's scales, he stopped. The heat radiating from her body was like standing next to a fusion reactor, but it wasn't the burning heat of weapons. It was the warmth of life, of a creature whose very existence defied everything humans thought they knew about the laws of physics. The baby dragon in her claws was clearly dying. Its breathing was shallow and irregular, and Marcus could see strange, dark veins spreading under its scales like some kind of infection. Whatever was killing it was beyond anything in his medical training, but that didn't stop him from wanting to help. Marcus looked up at the mother dragon and did something that would have gotten him court-martialed if any human military commander had witnessed it. He extended his hands toward her dying child, the universal gesture of offering assistance. The dragon's eyes widened, and Marcus saw something like surprise flicker across her alien features. She tilted her massive head, studying him with new intensity. Then, with movements so careful they seemed almost reverent, she lowered her claws and allowed Marcus to approach her baby. The moment Marcus's hands touched the small dragon, he felt a shock that had nothing to do with electricity. The creature was burning with fever, its skin scorching hot, even through its scales. But more than that, Marcus felt something else, something that shouldn't have been possible, a connection. Images flashed through his mind that weren't his own memories. He saw vast cities built into the sides of volcanoes, saw dragons soaring between stars without ships, saw a civilization that had mastered forces humans barely understood. And he saw the baby dragon, healthy and playful, chasing its mother through clouded skies before the sickness took hold. He saw the mother's desperate search for help, her journey across hostile space to reach a world where she had heard rumors of species that might be able to help. A species known for their stubborn refusal to give up, even when facing impossible odds. Marcus understood then why she had come here to a human research station on a backwater planet. She hadn't come to attack or conquer. She had come because she had heard stories about humans, stories that painted them not as weak prey, but as the one species in the galaxy that never stopped fighting for life, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed. The dragon mother made a sound deep in her throat, a complex series of tones that Marcus's universal translator struggled to process. When the meaning finally came through, it was simple and devastating. Please. Marcus looked at the dying baby dragon in his arms and felt the weight of two civilizations resting on his shoulders. Everything he had been taught told him this was impossible. Dragons were the enemy. They were monsters that destroyed human worlds without mercy. But holding this small, sick creature, feeling its labored breathing and seeing the desperate hope in its mother's eyes, Marcus knew that everything humanity thought they knew about their ancient enemies might be wrong. The baby dragon's breathing grew weaker, and Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. He wasn't a medical doctor, and he certainly wasn't qualified to treat alien physiology. But he was a scientist, and scientists solve problems. They found ways to help when no one else could. Marcus carefully carried the baby dragon toward his research station, the mother following close behind. Her massive form moved with surprising grace, her claws leaving deep gouges in the crystalline ground, but somehow never coming close to harming the human who carried her most precious possession. Inside the research station, Marcus laid the baby dragon on his examination table and began running every scan his equipment could perform. The readings were unlike anything he had ever seen. The creature's internal temperature was off the charts, but that seemed to be normal for its species. More troubling were the energy readings. Something was interfering with the natural bioelectric fields that kept the dragon's metabolism functioning. The mother dragon had followed him inside, somehow compressing her massive form to fit through the doorway. She watched every move Marcus made with intense concentration, her eyes never leaving her child. When Marcus glanced at her, he saw something that transcended species, a mother's love, pure and desperate, and willing to trust even her greatest enemy if it meant saving her baby. Marcus worked through the night, running test after test, cross-referencing the dragon's physiology with every xenobiology database he could access. The baby's condition continued to deteriorate, its breathing becoming more labored with each passing hour. The dark veins under its scales spread further, and its body temperature began to drop despite the heating systems Marcus had activated. As dawn approached, Marcus made a discovery that changed everything. The baby dragon wasn't dying from a disease or infection. It was dying from poisoning. Something in its system was blocking the natural energy flows that powered its incredible abilities. But the poison wasn't from any natural source. It was artificial, designed specifically to target draconian physiology. Someone had deliberately poisoned this baby dragon, and Marcus had a terrible suspicion about who might be responsible. The timing was too convenient, the specificity of the toxin too precise. This wasn't random alien warfare. This was targeted, deliberate, and it had succeeded in bringing one of humanity's greatest enemies directly to a human research station. Marcus looked at the mother dragon, who was watching him with eyes full of hope and trust, and realized that both their species might be walking into a trap that was far larger and more dangerous than either of them understood. But first, he had to save a dying baby, and time was running out. The storm outside had passed, but Marcus knew that the Real storm was just beginning. Whatever force had poisoned the baby dragon was still out there, and they had used a mother's love as bait in a game that could determine the fate of both humanity and the Draconian Empire. As Marcus prepared his next round of tests, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything he thought he knew about this war was about to be turned upside down. Marcus spent the next 6 hours working frantically to synthesize an antidote for the poison coursing through the baby dragon system. The mother dragon never left his side, her massive presence both comforting and intimidating as she watched every move he made. Occasionally, she would make soft, rumbling sounds deep in her throat, and Marcus began to understand that she was speaking to her baby, offering comfort and encouragement in her own language. The breakthrough came when Marcus realized that the poison wasn't just blocking the dragon's natural energy flows. It was specifically designed to disrupt the quantum resonance that allowed dragons to manipulate matter and energy at the molecular level. This wasn't random alien bioweaponry. This was precision engineering that required intimate knowledge of draconian physiology, knowledge that no human should have possessed. As Marcus calibrated his equipment to produce a neutralizing agent, his communication console erupted with incoming signals. The display showed multiple ships approaching Kepler 442b, and Marcus felt his heart sink as he identified the signatures. 3 of them were human military vessels, but the 4th was something that made his blood run cold, a Nexari dreadnought. The Nexari were the puppet masters of the galaxy, an ancient species that had been manipulating younger races for millennia. They claimed to be peaceful mediators, but Marcus had always suspected their true agenda was far more sinister. Now, seeing one of their ships approaching while a baby dragon lay dying from a poison that seemed designed to bring dragon and human together, Marcus began to understand the scope of the trap they had all walked into. The mother dragon sensed the approaching ships before Marcus's sensors detected them. Her head snapped toward the sky, and a low growl rumbled through her massive frame. She turned to Marcus and made a series of complex sounds that his translator rendered as betrayers come. Deathbringers approach. Marcus looked into her ancient eyes and saw something that chilled him. Recognition. She knew exactly who was coming, and she knew what it meant. The Nexari weren't just approaching by coincidence. They had orchestrated this entire situation, poisoning the baby to force a meeting between human and dragon, and now they were arriving to clean up the evidence of their manipulation. The antidote was nearly ready, but Marcus knew they were running out of time. The approaching ships would be in firing range within minutes, and he doubted either human or dragon would survive what came next. Unless he could find a way to prove to both species that they were being played against each other by forces that saw them both as threats to be eliminated. Marcus made a decision that would have terrified him under any other circumstances. He activated the station's emergency broadcast system and opened a channel to all approaching ships, human and dragon alike. If the Nexri wanted to use him as a pawn in their game, he was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what was happening. "This is Dr. Marcus Chun at Research Station Alpha 7. He began, his voice steady despite the fear racing through his veins. "I'm currently treating a critically injured draconian infant that has been poisoned with a synthetic neurotoxin specifically designed to target dragon physiology. The mother dragon sought human aid because someone wanted us to be found together. We are both victims of the same conspiracy." The response was immediate and chaotic. Multiple voices crackled through the communication system at once. Human military commanders demanding his surrender, dragon voices roaring challenges and threats, and underneath it all, a cold, emotionless Nexri voice that cut through the chaos like a blade. "Dr. Chun," the Nexri speaker said, "you are interfering with a carefully orchestrated peace negotiation. Stand down immediately and allow us to handle the situation." Marcus laughed, a sound that held no humor. "Peace negotiation? You poisoned a baby to start a war. I've analyzed the toxin, and it's Nexri bioengineering. You wanted the dragons to blame humans for this attack, and you wanted humans to think the dragons were desperate enough to try biological warfare. Two species destroy each other while the Nexri emerge as the galaxy's new dominant power." The mother dragon had been listening to the translation of Marcus's words, and when she understood what he was saying, her reaction was immediate and terrifying. She reared back on her hind legs and released a roar that shook the entire research station. But her rage wasn't directed at Marcus. She was looking at the approaching Nexri ship with eyes that burned like small suns. "Truth speaker human," she said, her voice now coming through Marcus's translator with perfect clarity. "The betrayers killed many of my people's young. They said humans made death poison. We believed. We attacked human worlds. Much shame. Much regret." Marcus felt pieces of a massive puzzle clicking into place in his mind. The war between humans and dragons hadn't started because of territorial disputes or resource conflicts. It had begun with a series of mysterious attacks on dragon nurseries, attacks that the Nexri had blamed on human biological weapons. The dragons had retaliated against human colonies, humans had fought back, and both species had been locked in a war that served only the interests of their true enemy. The antidote was ready. Marcus carefully administered it to the baby dragon, watching as the dark veins under its scales began to fade. The little creature's breathing grew stronger, and after a few moments that felt like hours, its eyes fluttered open. The baby dragon looked around with confusion before focusing on its mother's face and making a soft, chirping sound. The mother dragon's relief was so profound that Marcus felt tears gathering in his own eyes. She gently nuzzled her child, making soft cooing sounds that needed no translation. But their reunion was interrupted by the arrival of the first human military ship, which immediately deployed drop troops around the research station. "Dr. Chun, you are ordered to surrender immediately," came a command over his communication system. "You are in violation of numerous first contact protocols and are to be considered a traitor to humanity." Marcus looked at the mother dragon, who was protectively curling her body around her now-recovering baby, and made another decision that would change everything. He activated his station's defensive shields, a system that had been installed primarily to protect against environmental hazards, but would hold against light weapons fire for a short time. "I'm not surrendering to anyone until the truth comes out," Marcus broadcast to all ships. "The Nexri have been manipulating both our species for decades. They poisoned draconian children to start this war, and they're here now to make sure no one survives to expose their plan." The human military commander's response was predictable. "You're clearly suffering from some kind of psychological break, Doctor. Stand down before we are forced to use overwhelming firepower." But before any human weapon could fire, the sky above the research station erupted with the arrival of a full dragon battle fleet. 12 massive draconian warships materialized from hyperspace, their bioorganic hulls gleaming with the same energy that powered their crews. Marcus expected to see the beginning of a battle that would destroy the entire planet. Instead, he witnessed something that would be talked about in both human and dragon histories for centuries to come. The dragon fleet formed a protective formation around the research station, their weapons powered but not targeted at the human ships. The lead Dragon ship opened a communication channel that reached every vessel in the system. Humans of the void-walking ships came the voice of what must have been a Dragon admiral. We come not for war, but for truth. The small firechild's mother has shared her memories through the Dragon bond. We know of the betrayer species' deception. We know of the poison that killed our young and was blamed on your people. We offer alliance against the true enemy. Marcus watched his scanner display as the Nexari dreadnought, which had been holding position at the edge of the system, suddenly began charging its main weapons. The peaceful facade was dropping, and the ancient manipulators were preparing to eliminate everyone who knew their secret. The baby dragon had recovered enough to sit up on Marcus's examination table. It looked at him with eyes that held the same ancient intelligence as its mother's, and Marcus felt that strange mental connection forming again. Through it, he could sense the wonder and gratitude of a young mind that understood it had been saved by someone who should have been its enemy. The mother dragon turned to Marcus and spoke words that would echo through galactic history. Human healer, you have proven that life is more sacred than war. The dragon clans will remember this debt. We name you friend of the fire children, protector of the innocent. Your species is no longer our enemy. But their moment of understanding was shattered as the Nexari dreadnought opened fire, not on the human or dragon ships, but directly on the research station. The ancient aliens had decided that if they couldn't maintain their deception, they would simply eliminate all witnesses. Marcus's shields flared and began to fail under the onslaught of weapons that could crack planets. The mother dragon's reaction was instantaneous. She spread her massive wings and positioned herself directly above Marcus and her child, her scales beginning to glow with internal fire as she prepared to sacrifice herself to protect the human who had saved her baby. But she wasn't alone. Every dragon ship in the system opened fire simultaneously, their bioplasma weapons converging on the Nexari dreadnought in a display of coordinated fury that lit up the entire star system. The human military ships, caught between their programming and the evidence of what was really happening, hesitated for crucial seconds before their commanders made the decision that would reshape galactic politics. The human fleet added their firepower to the dragon assault, and together, the two species that had been at war for 20 years turned their combined might against the true enemy that had manipulated them both. The Nexari dreadnought, for all its advanced technology, was not prepared for the unified assault of two of the galaxy's most dangerous military forces. As Marcus watched the enemy ship's shields fail and its hull begin to buckle under the combined assault, he held the baby dragon in his arms and felt a new kind of hope stirring in his chest. The little creature was purring now, a sound like distant thunder that somehow conveyed pure contentment. Its mother was still shielding them both with her body, but her defensive posture was beginning to relax as she realized that for the first time in decades, dragon and human were fighting on the same side. The war that had defined both species for a generation was ending not with conquest or surrender, but with the recognition of a truth that the Nexari had spent centuries trying to hide. Humans and dragons were not natural enemies. They were both young, passionate species that valued courage, loyalty, and the protection of their children above all else. In their shared humanity, they had found something that transcended the differences in their biology. The Nexari dreadnought finally exploded in a burst of exotic matter that briefly outshone the system's star. As the light faded and debris scattered across space, Marcus realized that the easy part was over. Destroying the immediate threat had been simple compared to what came next. Two species that had spent decades trying to kill each other would now have to learn how to live together in peace. But holding the baby dragon and feeling its mother's protective presence above him, Marcus thought it might just be possible. The aftermath of the battle brought an uneasy silence to the Kepler 442b system. Marcus stood in the observation deck of his research station, watching as human and dragon ships maintained careful distances from each other. The baby dragon, now fully recovered and incredibly energetic, was exploring every corner of the station with the boundless curiosity of youth. Its mother followed close behind, her massive form somehow managing to navigate the human-sized corridors without causing damage. The first challenge came within hours of the Nexari ship's destruction. Admiral Sarah Rodriguez of the human fleet demanded immediate evacuation of all personnel, while Dragon Lord Thessarian of the Dragon Armada insisted that the truth-bearer human should be brought to the Dragon homeworld for proper honors. Both species, despite their newfound alliance, still fundamentally misunderstood each other. Marcus found himself in the unique position of being the only human who had formed a direct mental connection with dragons, and the only person both sides trusted completely. The baby dragon, whose name Marcus learned was Pyraxis in the ancient dragon tongue, had created a permanent bond with him during its healing. Through this connection, Marcus could communicate not just with Pyraxis and its mother, Thorania, but with any dragon who opened their mind to the link. The responsibility was overwhelming. Marcus was a xenobiologist, not a diplomat, but he was rapidly becoming the bridge between two species that had barely managed to stop shooting at each other. The weight of that responsibility became clear when both fleets received urgent communications from their respective homeworlds. The war was still raging across dozens of star systems, and news of inexorable deception had not yet reached the front lines. The Fire Clans will not easily accept that the death of their young was not caused by humans, Thorania explained to Marcus as they watched the distant fleets. Many have lost children to the poison death. Their rage burns deep in their hearts. Words alone will not convince them. Admiral Rodriguez's concerns were equally valid. My government has already labeled you a traitor, Chun. When they learn you formed some kind of psychic link with the enemy, they'll consider you compromised. The peace treaty we might negotiate here could be overturned by both our peoples before it's even signed. Marcus realized that ending the war would require more than just revealing the truth. Both species would need proof that cooperation was not only possible, but beneficial. They would need to see concrete results from human-dragon partnership, something so valuable that it would overcome decades of hatred and mistrust. The answer came from an unexpected source, Pyraxis itself. The young dragon had been exploring Marcus's laboratory equipment with intense fascination, its developing mind forming connections that neither human science nor dragon wisdom had previously considered. When Marcus found the small dragon attempting to manipulate the quantum resonance chamber used for his botanical research, he initially tried to lead it away from the dangerous equipment. But Pyraxis was insistent, and through their mental link, Marcus began to understand what the young dragon was trying to show him. Dragons didn't just manipulate energy through biological processes. They could interface directly with quantum fields in ways that human technology could barely detect. Pyraxis was demonstrating that dragon abilities and human science could work together to achieve things that neither species could accomplish alone. Working together, Marcus and Pyraxis managed to create something that should have been impossible, a stable quantum bridge that could transmit matter and energy instantaneously across vast distances. What they had accidentally discovered was the foundation for faster-than-light travel that didn't require the massive energy expenditures that limited both human and dragon exploration of the galaxy. The implications were staggering. Both species had been confined to relatively small regions of space because interstellar travel, while possible, was slow and energy-intensive. The technology Marcus and Pyraxis had developed could revolutionize everything from trade to exploration to communication. It was exactly the kind of breakthrough that could prove to both species that cooperation was more valuable than continued warfare. But their celebration was short-lived. The quantum experiments had created energy signatures that attracted attention from across the galaxy. Within hours of their successful test, new ships began arriving in the Kepler 442b system. These weren't human or dragon vessels, and they certainly weren't Nexari. There was something far worse. The Void Hunters had found them. Marcus had read about the Void Hunters in classified intelligence reports, but he had never expected to encounter them. They were an ancient machine intelligence that had been wandering the galaxy for millions of years, systematically exterminating any species that developed technology advanced enough to pose a threat to their dominance. They had wiped out dozens of civilizations, and their appearance in a star system usually meant that everything living would be dead within days. The Hunter ships were massive geometric constructs that seemed to bend space around them. They didn't communicate, didn't negotiate, and didn't take prisoners. They simply arrived, analyzed the local technology level, and began the process of sterilization if they determined that a species had become too advanced for their own good. The quantum bridge technology that Marcus and Pyraxis had developed was exactly the kind of breakthrough that would trigger a hunter response. The ancient machines had detected the energy signatures from across the galaxy and come to eliminate the threat before it could spread. Both the human and dragon fleets immediately shifted into defensive positions, but Marcus knew from the intelligence reports that conventional weapons were largely ineffective against hunter technology. Their ships were protected by energy fields that could absorb and redirect most forms of attack, and their own weapons were designed to disrupt the quantum foundations of matter itself. But Marcus had an advantage that previous civilizations hadn't possessed. He had dragons. Through his link with Pyraxis, Marcus could feel the young dragon's excitement rather than fear. Dragons, he realized, had been fighting machines like the Void Hunters for millennia. The ancient dragon myths weren't just stories about battles against metal monsters. They were historical records of a war that had been raging since before humanity had even developed agriculture. Thorania's reaction to the hunter ships confirmed Marcus's suspicions. The massive dragon reared back and released a roar that could be heard even through the vacuum of space. It wasn't a sound of fear or anger. It was a battle cry that had echoed through dragon space for thousands of years. "The metal Deathbringers," she said to Marcus, her mental voice filled with ancient fury. "They killed the first clans when the universe was young. We have been preparing for their return since the Great Fire memories were first shared among our people." Marcus watched in amazement as the dragon ships began to transform. What he had thought were purely biological vessels revealed technological components that seamlessly integrated with living tissue. Dragon biotechnology and engineering had been specifically developed to counter Void Hunter capabilities refined over millennia of occasional skirmishes with the ancient machines. The human fleet, however, was completely outmatched. Their weapons and shields were designed for fighting other organic species, not million-year-old machine intelligences. Admiral Rodriguez's ships would be destroyed within minutes if they tried to engage the hunters directly. But Marcus and Pyraxis had created something new, a hybrid technology that combined human quantum science with dragon biomanipulation. If they could find a way to share this technology with both fleets, they might have a chance of defeating the hunters and proving once and for all that human-dragon cooperation was the key to survival in a hostile galaxy. The challenge was time. The Void Hunter ships were already beginning their analysis protocols, scanning every ship and facility in the system. Marcus estimated they had perhaps an hour before the machines completed their assessment and began the extermination process. Working frantically, Marcus and Pyraxis began modifying both human and dragon technologies with quantum bridge principles. The young dragon's natural ability to manipulate matter at the quantum level allowed for modifications that human engineers would have thought impossible, while Marcus's understanding of the mathematical principles involved enabled precise calibrations that even ancient dragon wisdom couldn't achieve. The first test came sooner than expected. A Void Hunter scout ship separated from the main fleet and approached the research station, clearly intending to analyze the source of the quantum signatures. Marcus watched on his sensors as the machine intelligence began scanning his facility, and he knew that within minutes it would identify him as the creator of potentially dangerous technology. Thorania positioned herself between the station and the approaching hunter ship, her body beginning to glow with the internal fire that powered dragon plasma breath. But instead of the traditional bioplasma, she was channeling the modified quantum energy that Marcus and Pyraxis had developed. When she finally released her attack, it wasn't just a stream of superheated matter. It was a directed quantum field that disrupted the fundamental structure of the hunter ship's protective barriers. The machine intelligence's shields failed for the first time in recorded history, and conventional dragon bioplasma tore through its hull like paper. The hunter ship exploded in a burst of exotic matter, and Marcus felt a surge of hope that was immediately shared by every dragon in the fleet through their natural mental networks. The celebration was premature. The destruction of the scout ship triggered an immediate response from the main hunter fleet. All 12 remaining ships powered their primary weapons and began advancing on the allied human dragon force. The real battle was about to begin, and Marcus realized that the fate of both species now depended on how quickly they could learn to work together using technology that had been invented less than a day ago. As warning alarms sounded throughout his station and both fleets prepared for the fight of their lives, Marcus looked down at Pyraxis, who was looking back at him with complete trust and confidence. The young dragon believed that together they could accomplish anything. Marcus hoped that faith would be enough to save them all. The Void Hunters were coming, and the next few hours would determine whether the galaxy's future belonged to organic life or ancient machine intelligence. But for the first time in galactic history, that organic life would be fighting back with the combined strength of human ingenuity and dragon fire, forged together by the bond between a desperate mother and a human who refused to let anyone die alone. The Void Hunter fleet advanced with the mechanical precision of an algorithm made manifest. Their geometric ships moved through space in perfect formations, calculating optimal firing solutions and analyzing defensive patterns with the cold efficiency of minds that had been perfecting the art of extermination for eons. Marcus watched from his observation deck as both human and dragon ships scrambled to implement the quantum modifications that might give them a fighting chance. The irony wasn't lost on him that humanity and dragonkind were about to fight their first battle as allies against an enemy that had been the dragon's ancient nemesis long before humans had ever looked up at the stars. Through his mental link with Pyraxis, Marcus could feel the young dragon's excitement mixing with ancestral memories of previous encounters with the metal destroyers. Dragons, he was learning, had very long memories when it came to their enemies. Admiral Rodriguez's voice crackled through the communication system as her fleet finished installing the quantum field generators that Marcus and Pyraxis had designed. Dr. Chun, I hope you understand what you've gotten us all into. These modifications are completely untested, and we're about to bet every human life in this system on the theories of a xenobiologist and a baby dragon. Marcus would have laughed if the situation hadn't been so desperate. Admiral, yesterday I was studying plant samples. Today I'm apparently the architect of an entirely new form of warfare. I'm as terrified as you are, but terror has never stopped humans from doing impossible things. Thorania's mental voice joined the conversation through the translation network that Pyraxis had helped establish between all ships. Fear scent is strong among humans, but courage fire burns brighter. This is why the Metal Death cannot understand your species. They calculate fear, but cannot measure determination. The first exchange of fire came as the lead Void Hunter ship entered optimal range. Its primary weapon was something that Marcus's sensors couldn't properly classify. It seemed to fire concentrated nothingness, beams of energy that unraveled the quantum foundations of whatever they touched. The target was the human destroyer UNS Defiance, whose captain had volunteered to test the new defensive systems. The quantum field generators that Marcus and Pyraxis had developed created a barrier around the Defiance that existed in multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. When the Void Hunter's reality unraveling beam struck the ship, instead of tearing it apart at the quantum level, it was redirected into parallel dimensions where it dissipated harmlessly. The Defiance emerged from the attack completely unharmed, and Marcus heard cheers echoing across both fleets. But the Void Hunters adapted with terrifying speed. Within seconds of witnessing their primary weapon fail, they reconfigured their attack patterns to compensate for the new defensive technology. The second volley came from 3 ships simultaneously, each firing from a different dimensional angle to overwhelm the quantum barriers through geometric complexity. This time, it was Dragonlord Thessarian who demonstrated the offensive capabilities of their hybrid technology. His flagship, a living vessel grown rather than built, channeled quantum-enhanced bioplasma through organic conduits that could reshape themselves in real time. The resulting attack was unlike anything seen in galactic warfare. A stream of weaponized space-time that twisted reality around the target Void Hunter ship until its geometric perfection collapsed into geometric impossibility. The ancient machine intelligence exploded in a burst of recursive mathematics that briefly created a small black hole before the universe's laws reasserted themselves. Marcus felt Pyraxis's delight through their mental link. The young dragon was treating this as the most exciting game imaginable, completely unaware that they were fighting for the survival of organic life in the galaxy. The Void Hunters' response to their losses was predictable and terrifying. they stopped holding back. The remaining 10 ships formed a perfect sphere around the Allied fleet and began charging their planet-killer weapons. Marcus had read about these devices in the classified reports about previous civilizations the Hunters had destroyed. They could literally ignite a world's atmosphere or collapse its gravity well, sterilizing entire star systems in minutes. But planet killers required time to charge, and that time gave the Allied fleet an opportunity that no previous civilization had possessed. The quantum bridge technology that Marcus and Pyraxis had discovered allowed for instantaneous communication and coordination across vast distances. For the first time in the war's history, human tactical precision could be combined with dragon intuitive combat instincts in real time. What followed was a battle that would be studied by military strategists for generations. Human ships provided targeting data and tactical analysis, while dragon vessels delivered attacks guided by instincts that had been honed over millions of years of evolution. The quantum enhancement technology allowed both species to punch far above their normal weight classes, creating weapons and defenses that the Void Hunters' ancient programming couldn't predict or counter. Marcus watched in amazement as the UNS Courage, a light cruiser that should have been completely outmatched, used quantum tunneling to appear inside a Void Hunter ship's defensive perimeter and deliver a point-blank plasma bombardment guided by dragon fire instincts. The machine ship's hull, which had been designed to resist external attacks, couldn't handle the internal assault and collapsed like a house of cards. Meanwhile, Therania had linked her bioelectrical systems with the human fleet's computer networks, creating a hybrid artificial intelligence that could process battlefield information faster than any purely electronic or biological system. She was literally thinking with human logic while fighting with dragon instincts. And the combination was devastating to enemies who had learned to predict and counter either approach alone. The tide of battle began to turn when Marcus realized that the Void Hunters had a fundamental weakness that no one had ever been able to exploit before. They were so ancient that they had become inflexible. Their programming was based on millions of years of successfully exterminating organic civilizations. But they had never encountered organic species working together with hybrid technology that violated their basic assumptions about how life and intelligence should operate. Through Pyraxis, Marcus shared this insight with every ship in the Allied fleet. The young dragon's natural networking abilities allowed the realization to spread through both human and dragon forces simultaneously, and suddenly, everyone understood what they needed to do. Instead of trying to defeat the Void Hunters through superior firepower, they began attacking the machine's fundamental assumptions. Dragon ships began behaving like technology, while human ships operated like living organisms. Quantum-enhanced bioplasma made machine ships act like living targets, while quantum-modified electronic warfare systems confused the Hunter's ability to distinguish between organic and artificial intelligence. The breakthrough came when Pyraxis, in a burst of juvenile inspiration, figured out how to hack the Void Hunters' communication networks using a combination of dragon telepathy and human encryption algorithms. The ancient machines had never evolved defenses against attacks that were simultaneously psychic and digital, biological, and technological. Within minutes, the remaining Void Hunter ships found their coordination disrupted as Pyraxis and a team of human programmers began introducing logical paradoxes into their shared consciousness. The machines that had exterminated countless civilizations through perfect coordination were suddenly isolated from each other, each one trying to solve impossible equations that couldn't be resolved through pure logic. The final assault was led by Admiral Rodriguez and Dragon Lord Thessarian working in perfect synchronization. Human precision guided Dragon Fury as quantum-enhanced weapons tore through Hunter defenses that had protected them for eons. One by one, the ancient destroyers were reduced to drifting debris, their million-year reign of terror finally ended by the combined efforts of two species that had learned to fight as one. As the last Void Hunter ship exploded in a cascade of fractured dimensions, Marcus felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with exhaustion. They had not only survived an encounter with the galaxy's most feared predators, they had decisively defeated them using technology that hadn't existed 48 hours earlier. But even as both fleets celebrated their victory, Marcus knew that the real challenge was just beginning. The quantum bridge technology that had saved them was now spreading through both human and dragon networks, shared freely by Pyraxis's unconscious telepathic broadcasting. Within hours, every major power in the galaxy would know that humans and dragons had developed something that could revolutionize interstellar civilization. Some would want to steal it. Others would want to destroy it before it could upset the balance of power. And still others would want to forge alliances with the species that had achieved the impossible, lasting peace between ancient enemies. Pyraxis chirped softly in Marcus's arms, the young dragon exhausted from the mental effort of coordinating the hybrid attacks, but clearly proud of its accomplishments. Through their link, Marcus could feel the deep satisfaction that came from knowing it had helped save not just its own mother, but countless other parents and children across the galaxy. Thorania nuzzled her child gently before turning to Marcus with eyes that held infinite gratitude. "Human friend," she said, "you have given my fire child a future where we'll never know war between our peoples. This gift is beyond price. The dragon clans will remember, and we will stand with humanity against any who would threaten this new peace." As Marcus looked out at the mixed fleet of human and dragon ships, working together to salvage useful technology from the defeated Void Hunters, he realized that everything had changed. The war that had defined both species for decades was truly over, ended not by conquest or surrender, but by the recognition that they were stronger together than they could ever be apart. But the galaxy was vast, and there were other threats lurking in the darkness between stars. The Nexary conspiracy had been only one of many forces that sought to manipulate or destroy emerging civilizations. The Void Hunters had been defeated, but there would be other challenges that would test the new alliance between humanity and dragonkind. Marcus held Pyraxis close and felt the young dragon's absolute confidence in their shared future. Whatever came next, they would face it together, united by the bond between species and the unshakable belief that life was worth fighting for, no matter the odds. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler, 442b, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Unity Station, watching as the first joint human-dragon colony ships prepared for departure to distant star systems. The quantum bridge technology that he and Pyraxis had discovered had revolutionized space travel, making it possible for both species to explore regions of the galaxy that had been unreachable just months before. Pyraxis had grown significantly in those 3 months, now roughly the size of a large dog rather than a house cat, though its curiosity and enthusiasm remained unchanged. The young dragon had become something of a celebrity across both human and dragon space, symbolizing the new alliance that had emerged from the ashes of an ancient war. More importantly to Marcus, Pyraxis had become the bridge between not just their two species, but between the very different ways humans and dragons understood the universe. The political aftermath of the Void Hunter battle had been complex and sometimes chaotic. Both human and dragon governments had initially been suspicious of the alliance forged in desperate circumstances, but the undeniable evidence of what cooperation could accomplish had gradually won over even the most skeptical leaders. The discovery that the Nexary had been manipulating both species for decades had helped justify the dramatic shift in relationships, though there were still factions on both sides that viewed the peace with suspicion. Marcus had found himself at the center of these political storms, serving as humanity's primary liaison with the dragons, while also coordinating the technical teams that were working to understand and expand upon the quantum bridge technology. It was exhausting work, but every time he felt overwhelmed by the responsibility, he would look at Pyraxis and remember that all of this had started with a simple refusal to let a child die, regardless of whose child it was. The real breakthrough in human-dragon relations had come when other young dragons began forming bonds similar to the one Marcus shared with Pyraxis. It turned out that dragon hatchlings were naturally predisposed to form mental links with other intelligent species if exposed to them during their first few months of life. Within weeks of the battle, dozens of human families had volunteered to host dragon young, while dragon clans had welcomed human children into their fire nests. These bond children, as they came to be known, were growing up truly bilingual and bicultural, equally comfortable with human technology and dragon biomanipulation. They represented a new generation that would never know the old hatreds, and Their very existence made continued warfare between the species practically impossible. No human would fire on ships that carried their adopted dragon siblings, and no dragon would attack colonies where their bondchildren lived. The technological implications of the alliance had been even more profound than the political ones. Dragon bioengineering combined with human manufacturing had created materials and systems that neither species could have developed alone. Ships that could heal themselves, computers that thought with both electronic and biological processes, and weapons that could adapt in real time to counter any threat. But perhaps most importantly, the quantum bridge technology had opened up entirely new possibilities for exploration and expansion. The galaxy was vast beyond human comprehension, filled with wonders and dangers that required the combined strengths of multiple species to survive and understand. The alliance between humans and dragons was just the beginning of what could become a truly galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. Marcus watched as Thorania approached the observation deck, her massive form moving with the grace that all dragons possessed. She had become something of an ambassador herself, working with human scientists to develop new applications for dragon abilities while also serving as a cultural interpreter for her own people. The bond between her and Marcus had evolved from desperate cooperation to genuine friendship, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. The first colony ships are ready to depart, Thorania informed him, her mental voice carrying undertones of both excitement and sadness. My clan sister Viridian will accompany the human families to the Kepler 1649 system, while your Admiral Chun will lead the joint expedition to the dragon-claimed worlds near Vega. Marcus nodded, feeling his own mixed emotions about watching these historic missions begin. It's strange to think that 6 months ago, humans and dragons shooting at each other would have been completely normal. Now we're worried about whether the supply ships will have enough chocolate for the dragon hatchlings on the journey. Pyraxis made a chirping sound that Marcus had learned indicated amusement. The young dragon had developed quite a taste for human confections, though it maintained that nothing could compare to the sulfur-rich crystals that dragons traditionally used as treats for their young. The communication system activated with an incoming message from the galactic monitoring stations that both species maintained on the edges of known space. Marcus felt his stomach tighten as he recognized the priority coding. Messages with that classification usually meant some new threat had been detected in the void between galaxies. Unity Station, this is Deep Space Monitor 7, came the voice of Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chun, one of Marcus's former students who had volunteered for the dangerous work of watching for signs of new hostile activity. We're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic rim. Unknown ship configurations, but the quantum resonance patterns suggest they're using some form of our bridge technology. Marcus exchanged glances with Thorania, both of them understanding the implications immediately. Someone had not only learned about their quantum breakthrough, but had developed their own version of it. Given the speed of their approach, they would be in human dragon space within days rather than the months that conventional travel would require. Can you identify the species? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Negative, sir. These aren't in any of our databases. But, Dr. Chun, the energy signatures are massive. We're talking about ships that make Void Hunter dreadnoughts look like escape pods. Whatever's coming, it's been traveling between galaxies, and it's headed straight for us. Pyraxis looked up at Marcus with eyes that held no fear, only eager anticipation. Through their mental link, Marcus could feel the young dragon's excitement about the possibility of meeting new species and learning new things. That optimism was infectious, and Marcus found his own anxiety being replaced by curiosity and determination. Thorania's reaction was more measured but equally resolute. If these travelers come in peace, they will find welcome among the fire clans and their human bond siblings. If they come for conquest, they will learn what the Void Hunters discovered, that unity creates strength beyond the sum of its parts. Over the next 72 hours, Unity Station became the center of frantic preparation as both human and dragon fleets mobilized to meet the approaching unknowns. But unlike the desperate scrambling that had characterized previous threats, this preparation was calm, organized, and confident. The alliance had been tested in battle and proven unbreakable. whatever was coming from the void, they would face it together. The first visual contact came when the alien ships were still 3 days out from the nearest inhabited system. Marcus stood in the joint command center that had been constructed to coordinate human and dragon responses, watching the long-range sensors try to make sense of what they were seeing. The approaching vessels were unlike anything in galactic records. Organic like dragon ships, but geometric like human constructions, massive but graceful, clearly technological, but somehow alive. "They're slowing down," reported Dragon Sensor Master Kirilleth, whose bioelectroperception could detect subtle energy changes that human instruments missed. "Their approach pattern suggests caution rather than aggression. They are curious about us." Admiral Rodriguez, now serving as the joint commander of the Alliance fleet, made the decision that would define first contact with the first truly alien intelligence either species had encountered. "Open all communication channels. Let them know we're here. We're peaceful, but we're not helpless." The response came not through radio or quantum communication, but through something that Pyraxis immediately identified as a form of enhanced telepathy that spanned interstellar distances. The alien intelligence that touched their minds was ancient beyond measure, curious, and surprisingly gentle. "Greetings, young builders of bridges," came the mental voice that somehow spoke in perfect human English and flawless dragon tongue simultaneously. "We are the gardeners, shepherds of life across the great void. We have watched your species grow from primitive beginnings to this moment of unity, and we come to offer welcome to the community of galactic civilizations." Marcus felt tears gathering in his eyes as he understood what was being offered. Humanity and dragonkind weren't alone in the universe after all. There were others out there, species that had learned to work together across the vast distances between stars, and they were extending an invitation to join something much larger than either humans or dragons had ever imagined. Through his link with Pyraxis, Marcus could feel the young dragon's boundless enthusiasm for the possibilities that lay ahead. New friends to meet, new worlds to explore, new knowledge to discover and share. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and they were just beginning to understand their place in it. As the Gardener ships approached, and Unity Station prepared to welcome the galaxy's newest members, Marcus looked down at Pyraxis and smiled. It had all started with a desperate mother's faith in the kindness of strangers, with one human's refusal to let a child die alone. That single act of compassion had saved not just one young dragon's life, but had opened the door to a future where no species would ever have to face the darkness alone. The war between humans and dragons was over, ended not by conquest, but by understanding. The age of isolation was ending, replaced by an era of cooperation and exploration that would reshape the galaxy itself. And it had all begun with a crying mother dragon who brought her dying child to the one place she believed might help, to a human who understood that some things transcended the boundaries between species. As Pyraxis chirped softly and settled into Marcus's arms for a nap, the young dragon's dreams were filled with images of the adventures that lay ahead. New worlds to explore with human friends, new knowledge to discover through dragon wisdom, and new bonds to forge between species across the stars. The future had never looked brighter, and it all started with the simple recognition that life, in all its forms, was worth saving. In the end, that truth had proven stronger than any weapon, more enduring than any empire, and more powerful than any force in the universe. Love, it turned out, really could conquer all.